Maximize frames per second in Arc Raiders v1.26.0 Riven Tides with tested settings, GPU-specific configs, DLSS FSR tuning, and CPU optimization for competitive performance. 3 settings account for 60 to 70% of the frames per second delta between ultra and competitive viable visuals in version 1.26.0. Start here before touching anything else. The Riven Tides weather system renders real-time volumetric clouds that occlude lighting in outdoor zones. Ultra samples at full resolution. High uses half res with temporal upscaling. Medium drops to quarter res. The visual difference between high and ultra is negligible, slightly sharper cloud edges at extreme distances. But the performance cost is massive. Dropping from ultra to high typically frees 12 to 18 frames per second on RTX 4070 class cards at 1440p. Medium saves another 6 to 8 frames per second, but introduces noticeable posterization when clouds move across the sun. Stick with high unless you're chasing. Riven Tides added DLSS 4 multi-frame generation for RTX 50 series cards, FSR 4 for Radeon RX 9000, and updated XS2 support for Arc B series. The upscaling tier you choose matters more than most in-game settings because the frame gen modes can double your render rate, but only if you're already rendering above 60 base frames per second. Enable DLSS 4 with multi-frame generation, the Performance plus Frame Gen 2 preset in-game. At 1440p, this renders internally at approximately 960p and generates 2 interpolated frames per real frame, effectively tripling your output from the base render rate. An RTX 5080 measured by Sportskeeda hit 100 frames per second average at 4K Ultra with DLSS 4. After locking in the critical 3, volumetric clouds, reflections, shadows, and your upscaling tier, these settings offer smaller but still meaningful frames per second gains with minimal visual cost. Ambient occlusion, AO, HBAO Plus, Ultra versus SSAO, High, costs 5 to 7 frames per second for slightly deeper shadow contact in crevices. Drop to SSAO unless you're already above 144 frames per second. The difference is invisible in motion. Anti-aliasing, TAA High is the baseline, required for DLSS FSR to work. TAA Ultra adds extra temporal samples that smooth sub-pixel shimmer on distant fences, but costs 3 to 5 frames per second. Stick with high. Texture quality, Ultra versus high, has 0 frames per second impact if you have enough VRAM, 12 gigabytes plus. Only drop to patch v1.26.0, reworked Arc Raiders job system to spread physics, AI pathing, and audio across more cores. This improved frame pacing on 8+ core CPUs, but also exposed bottlenecks on older 4-core and 6-core chips that were fine pre-patch. If you're seeing stuttering or low GPU usage, below 90%, despite reasonable settings, the CPU is likely the limiting factor. Open Task Manager, go to Performance, CPU, right-click the graph, and select Change Graph to Logical Processors. Arc Raiders heavily loads 2 to 4 cores, typically Core 0, 1, and whichever cores handle the render thread and physics. If any single core is pinned near 100%, while others sit below 50%, you're. Real-world testing shows wide variance, depending on upscaling config. These are native, no DLSS FSR figures, unless noted, measured by independent reviewers on version 1.26.0. RTX 5080, measured by Sportskeeda, 100 frames per second average at 4K Ultra Native, 87 frames per second at 1080p Ultra. The 4K number is higher because DLSS 4 auto-enables at that resolution in their test. Without it, expect low 60s. RTX 4090, measured by Steam Community. 130 frames per second average at 1440p Ultra Native. Still the king for no compromise max settings. RTX 4070 Ti, measured by Steam Community. 170 frames per second average at 1440p Ultra, with DLSS 3 plus frame gen. Native DLSS off drops to approximately 85 frames per second. RTX 4070 Ti Super. ArcRaiders stores user settings in People, Local App Data, %, ArcRaiders, save.cfg, /Windows No Editor, /Game User Settings.ini. 2 hidden CVARs can squeeze out extra frames if you're willing to sacrifice minor visual fidelity. Navigate to the folder above and open Game User Settings.ini in Notepad. Add the line sg.foliageQuality = 0 under _salability groups. This disables grass and small plants beyond 50 meters, gaining 5 to 8 frames per second in dense forest zones. Add r.streamingpoolsize = 4096 under %, system settings if you have 16 gigabytes plus system RAM. This preloads more texture data into RAM, reducing mid-match stutter when new areas stream in. Save the file and set it to Read Only. Right-click, Properties, check Read Only, so the game doesn't overwrite your changes. Some competitive games flag config edits as cheating. Build your free playbook for any GPU at betterfps.com/optimize.